Hey, what's up? Welcome into the CHGO Bears Podcast, presented by PointsBet. Use that promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. It is a Tuesday. We are remote from our beautiful places that we live, and Nicholas Moreano's here, and Will DeWitt, who is blurring out his basement, so we can't see his jerseys.
They're in a corner. They are in the shame corner over there. I have not touched them. I have not looked at them. You just reminded me that I even have possession of said jerseys.
Nice. Everything looks good. Welcome in. Fun show for you today. Of course, my name is Adam Hoge. Please follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Nicholas Moreano, at Will DeWitt. Just know that the L's are ones there. And we thank everybody watching live with us today on YouTube. And please hit that like button. Smash it, as they say, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification so you know when we go live. That's going to be very useful here when we get into training camp. Start to have shows probably a little bit all over the place as we try to bring you the best Bears coverage in the land here at CHGO. Fun show for you today. We are going to wrap up our final offensive player the Hoge's grades. We got one more player overall tomorrow. And then I came up with this plan today. The three of us did, of now that all the offensive guys have been discussed, the returning offensive players, let's mix in the newcomers too and try to come up with our top 10 players on offense. And I have a feeling our lists are going to be very different. It was also way harder than I thought it would be. I think it was harder for all of us than we thought it would be. So we're going to do that today.
Yeah, I think try was the key word there, Adam. You said, let's do it. And I was like, yeah, that's easy. I put 10 bullets on my page and I got 3 or 4 and then I kind of hit a wall. And I was like, now what? But I persevered and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And also people in the comments too, as we're doing that exercise, maybe brainstorm your top 10 and then you can compare it to ours because it was a difficult exercise. I'm curious to see what, fans are also thinking about these top 10 Bears players.
Yeah, I mean,
Nick, was it more difficult than running in that 5K?
1K. Yes, 10K, it was.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, like you, I got to like 5. I'm like, oh man, we are digging deep here. So it was an interesting exercise for sure.
I'm glad it was a 10K because that 40, what'd you say it was 49 minutes or that you ran?
I did that. Yeah.
That would have been a super slow 5K.
Yes, it definitely would have. But it was 10. It was 10. Make sure we get that.
All right, that's good. Let's jump in with David Montgomery, the top Bears offensive player from 2021. Not necessarily a surprise, although I guess Darnell Mooney would maybe be in the conversation for some others. But David Montgomery does lead the offensive players. And we are finally in the blue chip category. I don't know if this is going to surprise some people. I think it might. I do tend to think I am on the higher end of people who watch and view and appreciate David Montgomery. But 4.85 is by far the highest offensive grade we've had. And that does put him in the blue chip category. Anything over 4.5 is blue chip, which, in the top, we're talking players that are among the best players at their position in the league. Now, if you think about it like that, no one's sitting here making the argument that David Montgomery is like the best running back in football by any means, but he's on the lower end, at least in my opinion, of some guys that would be in that blue chip category. I think that, when you look at what he did last year in a not very good offense, which we all know, 849 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. Those numbers don't blow you away. I think you got to give him a little bit more credit for what he did in the passing game too, with 42 catches. And the things that started to bring his overall stats down, and even his grade, quite frankly, towards the end of the season, was the last 4 games. Things were really not impressive. The running game really fell apart for the Bears. I don't know how much of it was really his fault, but he only averaged 2.98 yards per carry in the final, we used to be able to call that quarter of the season, but now it's 17 games, so it's a little bit off. In my opinion, though, you watch the tape, David Montgomery is better than the numbers show. He's never really been in a good offense. We've talked about this before, guys. He showed up to training camp to me last year with an extra gear. He had gotten faster. We saw that. He got off to a really, really good start before he got hurt. What was that, week 4 when that happened?
It's Detroit.
When he tweaked the knee, and it looked like it could be really bad when it happened. He ended up only missing a few games and coming back. And he didn't quite have that same burst when he came back after that. Still, in my opinion, was a good, productive back without a lot of help on the offense flying, quite frankly. But that burst early on in the season, you saw a guy who all of a sudden put up 2 100-yard games on the ground in those first 4 games, and then that didn't happen again the rest of the year. I think a lot of that was a byproduct of the slumping offense. But again, I think you turn on the tape, you see a guy with vision, you see a guy who's really hard to tackle, always gets those extra yards. No one's sitting here claiming that he is the top gear among running backs in the league, which is why he was only drafted in the 3rd round. But I have a lot of appreciation for David Montgomery, and that's how the grades fell.
Blue chipper, the only one on the list, Adam, for offense. But I think what fans can appreciate about David Montgomery is that he's okay, and he had to be because the offensive line, with getting those 3 to 4 yard gains. Like, it's not every single run's going to be a home run type of run. So as a running back, you have to be okay with that. And I think David Montgomery had to, given the line that he's been playing with. But that's where you see those yards after contact. And when you look at the back, first game of the season against the Los Angeles Rams, he had his most yards after contact with 82. But it was since that game, though, and especially after week 4 when he got injured, he never quite got back to that level of making people miss or able to get those yards after he was contacted most times in the backfield. But for the most part, with David Montgomery, he gets you yardage when really there's no business getting any, especially with given how the offensive line is played. And so it makes sense that he is your blue chip player and arguably the best player on the Bears offense.
Yeah, and Adam, you hit it. You didn't have a lot of help last season. I think you ranked 45th in yards before getting contacted, average of 1.9. The only running back other than, let's see here, James Conner, that had over 200 attempts and averaged less than 2 yards before contact. That doesn't make things, easy for Montgomery by any stretch of the means. Of course, he can get those yards after contact, and he's good at it. But the offensive line needs to help him out to allow him to kind of unleash his full potential. Another area of his game that I was appreciative of last season was just his ability to be an effective receiver, catching over 85% of his targets. That's the second best among running backs last year, averaging over 7 yards per reception. He was just a good outlet for whoever's under center for the Bears last season, and I expect him to be, the same in this offense for Justin Fields under Luke Getsy.
Now, Nick, you found what appears to be some disrespect, though, for David Montgomery, which is a theme. We talk about this almost daily with certain Bears players, at least the handful that are actually good. But the Bears don't really get a lot of respect, quite frankly, as a team. They haven't earned that respect, and that's always going to bring them down. But what did you find on David Montgomery?
Yeah, major disrespect there, Adam. So ESPN right now has this series where they're ranking all the position groups and each individual player in those groups. And so the title is ranking the NFL's top 10 running backs for 2022. Execs, coaches, players make their picks for the best rushers. And what's important to note that these are players and they're not projected, like what they're going to do this next upcoming season. It's just the best players today. And I'm not going to give away all the details of the article, but David Montgomery is not in the top 10.
Wow.
And he wasn't an honorable mention. And then there's another category where it just says also receive votes. David Montgomery didn't receive a single vote in any of those categories. So there's 16 running backs that did get some kind of vote, and David Montgomery got none of them. And I'll tell you I'll give you one player from the honorable mention and one player from the receiving votes categories. One of the players in the honorable mention, Saquon Barkley, and that's above the receiving votes category. And then in the receiving votes category, you had guys like, I'll just give out Miles Sanders, who's also in that, or I think that same draft class. So major disrespect, I think, continues to be the theme when it comes to Bears positional players and their rankings among the NFL, just the NFL in general. But when I saw David Montgomery not even get a single vote, like, man, that just seems wrong. Just seems wrong.
Wasn't there something similar like last offseason where he got snubbed on something and there's a clip that the Bears released when he was talking to Coach, and I think Nagy about it, like, no one likes me, no one's voting for me, and he's like, that's fine, like, keep your head down and keep working, and nothing has really changed over a year. And it's interesting, you said there were 16 backs that had a vote and he didn't, because he was ranked the 17th rusher in the NFL last season with 850 yards. So it's interesting that it kind of fell that way, although Miles Sanders is way down there, but he didn't have a ton of attempts himself. But yeah, I think it's disrespectful. He didn't get a single vote. However, when you are coming up with a top 10 list, I think he's still borderline, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the list because, trust me, I like Javonte Williams from the Broncos. He turned out to be a great sleeper fantasy pick for me last year. But is he really there yet? I mean, already, as the number 10 guy? I mean, the truth is I'd have to look at this a little bit more. I kind of forgot that Zeke Elliott still managed to get 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. That's actually pretty impressive considering, like, I feel like I'm sort of done with Zeke. I think that the problem is, to me, if you put David Montgomery in the Cowboys offense, he would do even better than that. And a lot of these running backs are a product of the offenses they're in. But, I think there's a lot of places you put David Montgomery in. His numbers through his first 3 seasons would be much higher than they have been unfortunately, like we tend to say about so many players who get drafted to the Bears, but you get drafted to the Bears and you're in these offenses that don't really work, it works against you. So
look, the honorable mention with Saquon Barkley is, I think, what gets me the most here. Because honestly, since he's been drafted, Saquon has not lived up to his draft stats. He's been injured for most of the time, right? And so when they're saying this is not about projections and the player today, Saquon Barkley today is not better than what David Montgomery is. He's just not. He hasn't shown it. So I think that's where it kind of gets skewed a little bit, because I think when you mention a guy like Saquon, it's like what he could be, but he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, I think when they mention someone like Saquon, they're just going for the name, like the name recognition. Yeah. Oh yeah, Saquon Barkley, he's very good. David Montgomery, 3rd round running back, hasn't been able to crack into like that national spotlight just yet. And like Adam said, the offense that he's been in has not helped him. No real deep passing threats, vertical passing game. Teams could stack the box. It makes it real easy to sell out and stop that run. And the Bears offensive line, as we know, is very suspect last season. And this season is still a huge question mark for him, but I'm glad you brought this up, Nick, because, highlighting this is, I think, good for our listeners to know that it existed. And maybe David's listening too, and it gives him a little extra motivation heading into camp.
I mean, look, I'll give Saquon Barkley this. He was a better running back than David Montgomery before he got hurt. I mean, he burst on the scene. Yes. He averaged 5 yards per carry as a rookie. He went over 1,000 yards the first 2 seasons. I want to give him a little bit more credit for how he started, until the injury. But since the injury, he is definitely not the same player. David Montgomery has been a better player over the last 2 seasons now, easily, than Saquon Barkley has. And so, this is a little disrespectful, without a doubt. And maybe we'll see if this new offense is finally the place for David Montgomery. Regardless, he is the number 1 offensive player I have from 2021. I have a lot of respect for him. We could probably save the what do you do with David Montgomery going forward conversation for another day, because the thing is while scouts do the same thing as I'm kind of doing here, putting these players in tiers based on where they grade out, different positions still have different values within there. And so even though he becomes a blue chip player, I don't know that he's somebody I'm rushing to extend, because it is the running back position. And as we get into our next segment here in a moment, we start ranking the offense players. You're going to see another player at that position group probably high on our list we're about to do. But before we get there, we need to tell you the best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up. And if you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. And that's not it, because if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. So that's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making a $50 or more first-time deposit at PointsBet. Any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com. We will help you out. If you happen to see an edge in the game you are watching, or if your favorite team is primed for a comeback, so not like the White Sox right now, but a different favorite team maybe, well, you don't just have to watch the game. You can bet along with it live. PointsBet has more live betting, more live markets, and faster live cash outs. So download the PointsBet app right now. Use promo code CHGO. What are you waiting for? It is time to elevate your live betting game. Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
All right, Chicago sports fans, if you aren't a member of our CHGO family, what are you waiting for at this point? Members will have access to all of our premium content from all of our great writers. You also get a free shirt of your choice when you become a member. Got my new CHGO Skyline shirt yesterday, rocking it on today's show, so that can definitely be one. If you sign up and get a membership, you can get this shirt as well. And you get access to the members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. And, of course, we have podcasts and live shows on every team every single day, so make sure you have the bell notification on YouTube or following us all on our social media, just so you don't miss anything. So come join our amazing family that is constantly growing here at CHGO.
All right, guys, it is the moment of truth, or something.
Something.
Yeah, something like that. So I came up with this idea. I'm like, all right, we're going to be done with the offensive guys today. We'll do the offense. We can rank the offense. Then tomorrow, maybe we can do the defense. And then I'm like, all right, so let's each rank our top 10 Bears offensive players. And then I realized something I had not put together until this morning as we went through all my grades over the last month or so. There were only 9 offensive players featured that entire time. There were only 9 players from the 2021 Bears that played offense and qualified to even be given a somewhat realistic grade. And we started it with Tevin Jenkins, I think, on the first day. And that day I even said I wasn't completely comfortable giving him a grade. It almost felt like it should be an incomplete because he wasn't on the field enough. I'll give you another example. Like, one player we did not talk about was Latavius Simmons. Latavius Simmons technically is on the very, 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 very bottom of the 2021 grades because he played one game in Tampa and it was a disaster. And it wasn't really his fault because he got thrown out there because Elijah Wilkinson ended up on the COVID list for like the 19th time. If I have that all right. Anyway, it did not go well. I think he had a -5 in the game. And he didn't play in any other game the rest of the season. So, like, that wasn't fair to be like, oh, yeah, he's a -5 because of one game. So that's an example of a player who did not qualify. So if you just look at the offensive players who played in 2021, are returning for 2022, and qualified for an actual grade, there were only 9 players. That makes it hard to rank 10 players.
Exactly.
That means you're at least getting one newcomer that you don't really know who or what he is, unless you went out and you like signed, Teron Armstead or something. The Bears, the guys the Bears went out and got were C-list free agents or brand new rookies. And they didn't even draft an offensive player until 3rd round. So the point being, this was not easy.
No, not at all. It was a very difficult exercise, like we said at the top. And I'm really curious to see how this list comes about. And like I said earlier, if you're in the comments, get your top 10 offensive players. Let's see how they compare to ours.
It's a problem when I was looking at the roster and I heavily debated throwing Braxton Jones on my top 10, and I've never seen him play. You guys seen him practice, but just based off of him technically moving into the left tackle spot throughout OTAs, I'm like, hey, maybe he's top 10 worthy because I have some spots to fill. He didn't make it. I thought some things through, but I was there for a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie. I was in a 20 seconds of my life this morning where I was thinking about Braxton Jones, and then I realized that's probably too many seconds for a guy we've only seen in like 3 practices, really.
Short.
Yeah, in shorts. So, all right, we'll start this up. We're gonna go kind of one by one and go through who we each have at the top spot. Obviously, I've already given mine. We just went through my grades. David Montgomery graded out number 1, and I don't think anything's happened in the offseason to replace him as the number 1 guy in my mind, so I still have him at the top.
Okay. I thought we were going to reveal 10-1, but
Same.
maybe – but that works because I'm going to go with David Montgomery 2 as my number 1 as well. And I had a debate going back and forth whether that was going to be – actually, I don't want to reveal it because there's 2 guys that could be in contention there. But I also have David Montgomery as my number 1 too.
All right. I guess that means I'm up. For number 1, I did not go with David Montgomery. I did something a little different here. I went with the guy who needs to be number 1, and he's number 1 on the field and probably your heart, and that is Justin Fields as the top guy here. I know this is somewhat projection of looking for a year 2 leap out of Fields over here. I think Montgomery has that proven, established, I guess, experience that we've all seen over the past couple of seasons. But if we're ranking the top 10, and if we're doing the top 10 most important, he's number 1. But I would hope by the end of the year we can call him the bona fide best player on offense. And if not, I think that's going to be a problem for the Bears. So right now he's my number 1 player on offense. And again, I know it's like somewhat projection.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think everybody here would agree that he should be number 1 by the time the season ends.
Mm-hmm.
But, as of today, July 12th, 2022, he has not done enough to be the top player on offense right now. He better be, or the Bears are in trouble. Yeah. But right now, based on what we've seen, I can't say he's the best player on offense. I'll go to number 2 though. And I don't think there's gonna be much debate here. I think we're gonna get to a lot of debate. Although we already have a little bit with Will going with Fields number 1, but I have Darnell Mooney number 2. Again, still ahead of Justin Fields because Fields still needs to prove it. Mooney he's been great through 2 seasons. He graded out as a long-term starter for me from 2021, so he is my number 2 player.
And we're keeping it the same way here, Adam. I also have Darnell Mooney as my number 2 player. How I kind of was doing this, like, is Darnell Mooney a better wide receiver than David Montgomery is a running back? And that's how I kind of helped shape my list, and you'll see as we go down here. But Darnell Mooney is also my number 2.
All right. Ooh. We're going to let this keep going. So I also have Darnell Mooney number 2. So we're all in consensus here. However, that does drop David Montgomery on my list, which I think is a talking point for me right now. I agree with you that Montgomery may be a better back than Mooney's receiver. However, I think Mooney has been number 1 more available than we've seen out of Montgomery so far the past couple of seasons. And I think he's been, very productive as well. And he needs to become that Bears top guy right now. So I do think Mooney has that potential. We've seen him start to tap into it. And again, he was playing with multiple quarterbacks the past couple of seasons. I want to see what he can do with something consistent. So I have him at number 2 as well.
Yeah, Mooney has been available. He's played in every single game since he got drafted, and that is certainly one of his strengths. So the consensus, number 2. All right, number 3 for me, quarterback, Trevor Siemian. Kidding. I'm just kidding. Justin Fields, I do have him at number 3. He still has a lot to prove, obviously. But as we talked about last week when we talked about Justin Fields in the grades, like he's still graded out as a pretty solid starter as a rookie, despite the numbers might not showing that. But if you watch the film, you saw the moments, you saw him, the leadership, you saw him be able to run what was just a terribly designed offense. And so he is still, for me, at this point, the 3rd best player on offense.
I want to preface this. We all sent our lists individually to Lawrence, our producer. And I have Justin Fields as number 3 as well. That shouldn't be a shock given the first 2. But Yeah, we saw him in 12 games, you guys, and we saw him in an offense that didn't work, but you still saw those flash plays that I think can become more consistent if Luke Getsy's offense is guaranteed to cater to his strengths. So Justin Fields at this point in time is the third best player, but like we all said earlier, he needs to be number one by the end of the season.
Nick, I told you before we went live that I have a hunch that our top three will have the same players. I didn't know that you and Adam will go in the exact same order, but I am correct because my third best player right now is David Montgomery. So our top three, again, interchangeable. However, the same guys. You guys hit on Montgomery. We've talked about him a lot in this show. I don't think I need to say much more on him, but he's my third guy on this list.
All right. I'm not sure if this is where things are going to start to differ, I think we're getting to that point, and then I think things are going to get really different. But number 4.
Things are going to get different.
Okay. I like it. I like it. Number 4, I have Khalil Herbert. Another running back. Now, this is going to start a theme that's pointing to some of the problems the Bears have on offense. And we're not quite there, but we're getting there. But Khalil Herbert, who was as a rookie, as a 6th-round pick, played like a starter for me in the way I graded out the season. He comes in here at number 4. I think it says a little bit about what's lacking in other areas. But I think they got to get him more involved in the offense, because if he's really the 4th best player that you have on offense and he's your backup running back and he's not on the field, I mean, you got to find weapons. You got to find a way to get him on the field more. If he's really the 4th best player, which is just my opinion on this, but that's where I have him.
Okay, it's definitely going to take a turn here. I'm going with offensive lineman Cody Whitehair as the best Bears' 4th best player. I looked at just kind of the track record, and I know the past 2 seasons have not been his best, but I'm thinking with this new offense, he could be a better. Go back to that first couple years he was playing with the Bears, but he is the Bears' best offensive lineman at this point, most consistent at least. So I put Cody Whitehair here, and now I think like Lawrence prefaced just a couple seconds ago, this list is about to take some few turns here.
Okay, I'm nervous now. I'm getting nervous about my list. I feel good about it. You guys are just making me second guess it. So I'm going with another newcomer here. And by another, I mean, I guess the first. And that's going to be Byron Pringle as the 4th best player on this Bears offense. I really liked what I saw of him in Kansas City last year with the football in his hands, and he's going to be a legitimate playmaker here in Chicago. I know we don't know what his role is going to look like in this offense. We don't know what this offense is going to look like in general. However, just with my player preview series and as I was going through Pringle, I got really excited about him more so than maybe some other guys on this list. And I think outside of Mooney and Montgomery, Pringle is going to be that 3rd target in this offense. And so right now he's going to rank number 4.
All right. Now, I will say that I did do a little bit of projection in this. I mean, I didn't just do this strictly off of what my grade said from 2021, because you are trying to see what's going on in the offseason and who's primed for that next jump. I'm still looking for evidence that I'm seeing with my own eyes, right? But for example, the guy I put 4th was technically just below the guy I have 5th in my grades from last season, but I did reverse them in this order. But number 5 for me is Cody Whitehair, who unfortunately, he's been trending in the wrong direction the last couple of years. That's the issue, where I think Khalil Herbert is clearly ascending and is still young and had a heck of a debut as a rookie and should be even better on offense. But I do have Cody Whitehair, who still comes 5th on this list, which, first of all, let's give him a ton of credit. He's been the definition of reliability, dependability, even though his play has maybe dipped and by his own admission last year wasn't his best season. He still grades out as a mid to low tier starter. And he should be on this line. He's the guy that you can rely on the most on what is a suspect offensive line right now. Now, I also think that this points to some problems. What you have on offense, what you have on your own line, it goes back to the Kyle Long days when we were like, is it your right guard probably shouldn't be your most marketable player. Now they've changed that. They have Justin Fields now, and even David Montgomery and Darnell Mooney. But I don't know that I want my left guard number 5th on my list of top players on offense, unless he's like Quentin Nelson. Okay. So I still think he deserves to be there, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to sideswipe my other podcast partner here. Cause when I told Adam Johns that we were doing this today, he was like, "Oh, Cody Whitehair shouldn't even be on the list." And I was like, "Well, wait a minute. I think you want to try this exercise, and you're going to find that you're going to want to put Cody Whitehair on that list relatively quickly."
Yeah, very true. He needs to go through this exercise and do it for himself. Number 5, I have Cole Kmet as being a guy that the Bears hopefully can see more out of in year 3, but still 60 receptions, 612 yards, the touchdown production needs to be there. Especially if he wants to be a part of the Bears organization moving forward, and also just being able to make those contested catches. But again, in an offense that clearly didn't work, he found himself available for multiple different quarterbacks. And Cole Kmet even mentioned it in the last press conference we were with him, that the offenses had to change each time there was a different quarterback in some way or another. It doesn't just impact the quarterback, but also the pass catchers there. And yet Cole Kmet was somebody that, at given times throughout a game, you could throw the ball to and he can make a reception there. But he just needs to make some of those bigger plays. But I have him 5th here on my list.
I like it. He's not too much further down for me. We'll see exactly where he goes. He's not here to that number 5. I went with offensive line 2. However, as you see in the list, I went with Lucas Patrick, another newcomer. I think he's a little bit of a better run blocker, at least last season, than Whitehair. He also gave up less pressures, although when you look at the different quarterbacks that Whitehair was protecting versus Aaron Rodgers, who's really good in the pocket or escaping the pocket, I'm sure those pressure numbers can kind of get skewed a little bit in Patrick's favor. And I think where I'm taking this to, maybe bumped him up a little bit higher, is some of those intangibles, the off the field stuff, like his leadership. I think that presence has been felt immediately in that locker room, and that's why he's ahead of Cody Whitehair on my list. So back-to-back free agents, even though they're, as Adam said, C-list free agents, they're in my top 5, which is another damning statement if you'd ask me.
He's a prick, right? Lucas Patrick?
That's right.
That's how he was described by the GM. He's a prick.
Just lose the at. Just lose the at.
All right. Since we're halfway through this list, let's take our next break. And Nick, why don't you tell us about our friends at Owens?
Yeah, so one of my personal favorites here at CHGO, Owens, which stands for Only What You Need. This brand is a 100% plant-based protein company that gives you high quality and carefully selected ingredients to keep you functioning throughout your entire workday, and especially after an intense workout. In these protein shakes, you get your vegan omega-3s, your green superfoods like broccoli, kale, and spinach, and all these amazing ingredients just reinforce what Owens stands for, only what you need. I've been using it for the last 2 years, got my girlfriend hooked on it, and we all heard about Owens from Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who's at the top of our list in this exercise we're doing, and he does follow a plant-based diet. And what's cool, Owens and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. When you use the code CHGO20, you get 20% off your first purchase at liveowen.com. Again, that is 20% off with the code CHGO20 at liveowen.com. So join us here at CHGO and Justin Fields and try Owens, only what you need.
And speaking of CHGO, I mean, we're here. We're talking Bears football. I just want to know if you haven't joined our family yet. I don't know what the reason is. There's so many awesome benefits by becoming a family member here at CHGO. You get all of our podcasts and live shows on the Bears every single day. Of course, we have all of our other amazing people on staff that do it for their favorite teams as well. I'm excited about our post-game shows. And of course, what I like too is all of that awesome content that is on our website as well, that premium written content. We want to make sure that all of what we give you is valuable and meaningful. And I know I make sure I do that every single time I hit that publish button. And of course, you can get all the merchandise that we have that's super cool looking. The one that Nick's wearing right now is perhaps my favorite shirt of the bunch. And I don't know if you noticed during this podcast, if you're watching, but my eyes keep shifting over to the left of my phone. That's because of our Discord. It just never stops. Like that private community. It just keeps going all day long. And I enjoy, not just looking at the interactions, but also partaking in those. It's a good way to connect with us and other like-minded Chicago Bears fan in an app, in a chat forum. It's a little better than, I say, some social media. And it's just what makes this community just a little bit more special. So if you haven't yet, head over to allchgo.com and sign up to become a member today, a family member, and join us. And we'd love to welcome you in with open arms.
And by the way, tomorrow, should be up tomorrow morning, I think, I will have a Q&A mostly about the Bears. Some things not Bears related too, just some fun summer items on there. And that'll be available for our members at allchgo.com. Got some good questions for that coming before I head on vacation.
Ooh.
Before before camp. A break before camp. That's what we're going to do. All right, let's keep the list going. We are number 6, and this is where I drop in Cole Kmet, the Bears tight end, who we've talked about a lot on the show. I still am high on, but he's got to show more. And the funny thing is we went through the grades. Like, as much as I've sort of defended him and said I think he's still going to be good, and year 3 is typically when tight ends take off. He didn't even grade out as a starter last year for me. So he's kind of on that fringe starter level, and he obviously needs to be a lot better than that. But as I look at the jump I think he'll take, ideally, you'd hope he's even higher on this list by the time the season's over. But from where he's at right now, I slotted him in there at number 6.
All right. I'm going with someone that Will just talked about, Lucas Patrick, as my 6th player. Again, the intangibles do matter here. He's definitely going to be an upgrade over Sam Musfer, who, has been a guy that Swiss Army knife, you can put him in a bunch of different places. But Lucas Patrick, not only does he have that familiarity with Luke Getsy, which I think does help, but he is helping the other guys in the interior of this offensive line and what they're going to do with this offense. So Lucas Patrick, even though not the biggest signing by all means, maybe for the Bears, kind of, but someone that I think is going to be a part of what the Bears want to do offensively, and just to help out Justin Fields, calling out some of the blitzes or whatever it may be. Lucas Patrick showed that he can do that in a small sample size, but it also helps when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers who can, do that himself. But Lucas Patrick, number 6 on my list.
All right. Hey, we got some consensus between me and Adam. Number 6 for me, Cole Kmet. Adam mentioned we need to see progress. The area which I've identified progress on his podcast would be in the red zone. I want to see him be a stronger presence down there. He's one of the most targeted Bears last season, down inside the 20, and was unable to come away with a single score. Some of that is on him, unable to come down with contested catches. Some of it perhaps scheme as well. Whatever it is, he needs to be able to be one of them guys down inside the 20 for Justin. He has that big body. Go ahead and use it. And like you said, Adam, he needs to be higher in this list. Ideally, he should be number 4, right? If you have your top quarterback, your top receiver, your running back, you want that dominant tight end up there as well. So hopefully when we do this exercise again next season, number 1, I hope it's not nearly as difficult. Number 2, I hope Cole Kmet's in my top 5.
All right, as we move to number 7, this is where I put in my first newcomer to the team, but that is Lucas Patrick, who you guys have slotted in a little bit higher. I think I just need to see a little bit more from him in person. I do like him. I do think it was a good signing, but this was a guy who was a reserve for a while there in Green Bay before finally getting his opportunity. I think he took advantage of it. But there's some projection with him at center, and I think it should be an upgrade. But I still want to see this guy with my own eyes, pads on, at least in training camp, maybe a little bit in the preseason, before I anoint him, one of the top players on the entire Bears offense.
Very similarly to my guy who I have slide in at 7, a newcomer in Byron Pringle. Yes, I do like a lot of the intangibles he has, the yards after catch ability, but he was the number 4 option, maybe with Kansas City. And in this Bears offense, he's going to get more looks, more opportunities to show what he's truly capable of. But we need to see it. We need to see it in this offense if it actually works, and if he can take those skills that he does have and translates to this new offense where he's not surrounded with all the playmakers that the Kansas City Chiefs have, but with what the Bears have. And as we've gone through this exercise, it's not the best. So Byron Pringle is number 7 for me.
Nick, do you have like amnesia? Wasn't you like we were on the podcast talking about Pringle and you mentioned a lot of his success came from the individual effort?
It is, but it helps when you have other guys on the outside. But he does have, that's the thing that you hope translates, that individual effort, yards after the catch. Still number 7 though.
Okay, I was trying to help move him up. I really was on the
Lawrence
fly
wouldn't
here.
like that. Lawrence would not like that. You have to go through the whole list again, and it would just screw everything up.
Yeah. Sorry, you're stuck.
You're locked in.
That's it.
It's like a Sharpie.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Speaking of which, hopefully you didn't use Sharpie behind you, Nick.
Ooh.
No, that is my grandma. It's her birthday. 82nd birthday. Happy birthday, Mama Toya. Woo.
Happy birthday. That's
Happy
awesome.
birthday.
Yay, happy birthday. So for me, we're at what, number 7? Yeah. I have a player we've already talked about in this list, and that's Cody White here. I don't even know what to say other than what you guys mentioned. He hasn't been what we saw years ago. If we did this list 2018, he's a top 5 player, borderline top 3. But he's kind of had a dip. Would love to see him tap back into what made him a really damn good offensive lineman for this Bears team. But yeah, I don't think he has the same leadership intangible as Lucas Patrick. At least I've never seen that in his time. Of course, I'm not as been intimate in the locker room as someone perhaps as Adam Hoge has been over the years. But for those few reasons, that's why he's kind of dropped a little bit for me compared to Patrick.
Yeah. I think that pretty much says it all in Cody between the three of us as we move to number 8. This is where I put Byron Pringle. Some of what Nick said, just gotta, it's tough to take a wide receiver from the Chiefs, put him on the Bears and be like, yeah, he's going to be great. I mean, we've seen this too many times to make that jump, and that's probably not fair to Pringle. We are talking about a guy who's 28 years old, 42 catches last year on 60 targets. So they did bump him up in that offense. He did take advantage of it. 568 yards. He averaged 13.5 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns. He was an effective player there, but it's still like, is his contract confusing to you guys at all? Like, it just still 1 year, $5 million when there were some crazy wide receiver money being thrown out there. It just goes to show you that I understand the Ryan Poles connection, but there weren't a lot of GMs out there that were looking at what he did in Kansas City and be like, okay, yeah, we're projecting that forward to give us huge value here. That's the only thing I'm struggling with. And quite frankly, like, I haven't seen him do enough for me, even in these practices we've been able to watch, that blow me away. I mean, he's made some plays here and there. He's obviously going to be a big part of the offense, but I think sometimes you have players, and it goes for any position, who kind of fit in that fringe starter reserve role and give you valuable reps there when they come on the field. And then sometimes you try to ask them to do more, and they can't quite do more with those more opportunities, more reps. And maybe Byron Pringle will. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. But right now, that's why I can't put him higher than 8th.
No, good points there, Adam, and we'll see what he can do in training camp for sure. My number 8 player I have is Khalil Herbert coming in on my list. He showed a lot of good things in the limited amount of opportunities that he did have. Again, it's such a small sample size, but again, what I've seen is someone that can create yards after contact and make plays happen. When, again, a lot of the same things we said about David Montgomery, when the offensive line's not playing well, Khalil Herbert was still able to get 433 yards and have a 4.2 average and get those 2 rushing touchdowns. So Khalil Herbert, I think by the end of this year, should be higher up on this list. I think the Bears will actually use more of those just dual running backs and have them both on the field at the same time, but just get more opportunities in general for a Khalil Herbert.
Hey, we have Clay is on it. I also have Khalil Herbert in this round. Honestly, I really, really wanted to place him higher. My hope was if 2 running backs are that high, then yet again, what's it actually say about this Bears offense? Spoiler, if you want to go to allchgo.com, I did release my Khalil Herbert preview article today. Great timing. And Nick, you hit it. He should have a larger role. I mentioned why in the article. Luke Getsy As I know he was a part of Green Bay's offense last year. They pretty much split between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, 50-50, like right down the middle. And I can see the Bears, if they want Montgomery to remain healthy and as fresh as throughout the longevity of the season, splitting these reps and these carries is definitely the way to go. And we saw a lot of good from Herbert last year. And I would expect, I know Adam, you said with Pringle, like sometimes we ask guys to take on a bigger role and they can't. I don't foresee that being in Herbert's future. I think he's someone that will succeed, in a larger role here in 2022. And right now he's sitting at 8, but I can easily see him working his way up this list really quickly this season.
All right. These last two are going to be fascinating, I think. Because, well, here's mine. Larry Borom made my top 10. Part of it's just going off my grades from last year. It's a smallish sample size. He graded out as a fringe starter. I think this goes to show you, like I put a fringe starter at 6. I have 2 players I'm unsure about at 7 and 8. And now I have another fringe starter at 9. There's not a lot of players on this roster offensively that actually grade out as starters. You have to have 11 of them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, on the surface, that might seem crazy. I put Larry Borom in already, but I'm going down this list, and then I'm also trying to figure out, okay, which rookies can I realistically put in here? Which of the signings? I don't think this is just going to be a me problem here. I think all of us here are going to have some interesting names here at 9 and 10. But I go with Larry Borom. I liked what I saw, honestly, from a rookie. I think at a minimum, he can play right tackle. I know there's some who think he's better off at guard. I do think he's going to be a starter on this offensive line for the Bears. I think he's going to play better this year if he can stay healthy. And that's why I have him at number 9.
All right. Copy and paste. I also have Larry Borom at number 9 here. So a lot of the same reasons you were saying there, Adam. I also look at the game against Pittsburgh where Justin Fields had his best game of his career. Larry Borom also had a really good game against a defense that does have some quality pass rushers. So there were some flashes for a guy like Larry Borom. And yes, being a rookie, you're going to have a lot of downs, especially when you're moving from one side of the field to the other when you were just playing left tackle in college and now moving to the opposite side. Right tackle. But it's a guy that with this many limited options, I had to put him on the list at somewhere because there weren't much better players that were still left. So we got one more for me and Adam here.
All right. I didn't want to bore him to death in this round. So I went. Okay. Thank you.
Lawrence, time to end this podcast early. We apologize to all of our viewers, but that's just.
Hey, I appreciate a good dad joke. It's fine. Cool.
Dang it, I don't have my dad joke pro mug. I have my number 1 dad mug with me today. Next time I'll make sure to have it when I have one up my sleeve. But I'm going to continue my projection here in my top 10, which I think is just where the Bears are right now in this offense. But I'm going to go with Velus Jones Jr. Perhaps I'm slightly biased because I've been watching him since the pre-draft process, mocked him to the Bears. Here he is. I just love his attitude. Hearing what he's been having to say, even on like the Adam Rank podcast, like he has confidence, a lot of it. And he doesn't care that he's a little bit older than the rest of this draft class. He's ready to come here to compete, to produce, to perform. And I expect him to have a really decent rookie season. I don't want to say a great one. I don't know exactly where he'll fall compared to some of his peers. However, I do think he'll be a vital part of this offense, and he'll be someone that's turning some heads, and a lot of, I would say, casual fans will know who Velus Jones Jr. is before the end of this year.
Yeah, look, someone's got to fill out this list on offense. And you know what? It just broke the screen for a second.
I was about to say, what do you have up your sleeve this time?
And that's another option. Maybe we just end it at 9. The screen goes blank, and those are your Bears. I don't know what to do. I do have Velus Jones Jr. at 10. A lot of it's projection, but again, we got to go somewhere with this. And I'm not going down the list and giving you. I mean, I thought about putting Cairo Santos on here as a joke because he is the one. He's the one who scores the points. But technically, that's still special teams. I'm trying to even look like down my grades here. Who would even be in contention? I mean, we're going across names like Jimmy Graham at this point. Okay. And again, he's not back. I'm just telling you guys how they graded out in 2021. So you got to throw somebody in there. Obviously, if you're going to go with a weapon that they added as a rookie, Velus Jones Jr. is that guy. He's an older rookie. He's going to be in the mix. I think he's the next guy up at wide receiver. That's why I put him here at 10. I hope I'm right. I hope he's in the top 10. I hope he's even higher than 10. But that's what I can do right now.
Well, I hope my player that I have at number 10 is also in this list and can make his way up. Tevin Jenkins. I know we didn't see much of him, but this is definitely a projection-based pick right here for number 10. And the one I struggle with the most. Do I put Tevin on this list? And especially given everything that's happened in OTAs, where he's now with the second team. Is he going to start there come training camp? I didn't know. But given what the Bears had to do to go get him, move up in the second round to draft Tevin Jenkins to be your starter, your starting tackle, and now you have all this going on, I think I just had to put him in here at number 10. It's definitely projection-based. I need to see what he can do with the pads. I think that's where we'll see the best attributes from Tevin Jenkins. But this one, man, this was tough for the last one, but I put Tevin Jenkins on here.
Man, a part of me thought you may have went with Blasting Game here. Like,
That's really the guy I was thinking of right before the podcast.
Yep. Okay, real quick on him. I looked at him as he like hasn't played football at all. We've been giving this fullback a lot of credit, and I like him. I'm glad they added a fullback, but like he's been hurt. He's only been in the league for a few years. He didn't even make it with the Vikings when he came into the league. Now, part of that's being a fullback, a dying position.
Yes,
but I can't put a guy in the top 10 who like doesn't play ever.
Yeah, and he was injured last year, they brought in another kid, and he was better for the Titans, which is why Blasting Game was a free agent, and that's why he's here with the Bears. So I thought Nick was going to do it. I didn't say I was going to do it, Adam.
Okay.
My final guy. Go ahead.
Wait, let me ask you a quick question. If Jesper Horsted was still on the team,
yes,
would he be at number 10
you don't have
here?
to finish it. I know where you're going.
Okay,
yes.
I just want to make sure.
You would have been top 3.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Maybe I would have perhaps put him on this list. It may have been, a little bit of a joke. However, with my fandom for him, I think people would accept it. But to kind of close us off here, fellas, my number 10 is a player that's already on this list, and that's Larry Borum. I told you I wouldn't do it in the 9th, but he's down here in the 10th round for me. For someone who came in last season, with his draft status, which again shows you that draft status may not matter all too much. Like there are players who are drafted late, they can perform pretty well. He stepped in admirably last season. Nick, you highlighted, he had some really good games. Of course, there were some growing pains along the way, but as Adam said too, I expect him to start. I think he's a very solid offensive lineman for this football team, and I'm glad he's here. It's unfortunate that perhaps he had to round it out because even though he's solid and serviceable, I wouldn't say he's a really good player at this age of his career just yet. But yeah, Larry Borum's going to kind of cap off our top 10s, which I think even though things got a little different in the bottom half, a lot of similar names and still a lot of consensus.
Yeah. All the names are actually the same. All our 10s are the same except for Tevin Jenkins. You having Tevin Jenkins on there, Nick, instead of Velus Jones Jr. That's the only one. Otherwise, we just have the order a little bit different. Let's see here. Clay was doing his own list, one of our viewers, with some comments, and I noticed that he had one he has Braxton Jones in there, which I just can't do that yet. Sam Mustipher, though, I want to comment on, because when I was just going through I actually missed Sam Mustipher. He should have been he probably would be 11, quite frankly. And I think there's an argument.
I put him over Tevin Jenkins. I mean, to be complete, if you're taking out projection, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah, and I think that's the only reason why I didn't put him in the top 10 was because I don't know. I just feel like he's kind of capped. I think there's a ceiling there, right? I think he can be a really solid backup center for this team and play okay. Maybe not skip too much of a beat if he has to come in. But I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't put him totally in the top 10, but he's kind of the next man up. Since that name came up, I just want to mention it.
It's a fun exercise, though, Adam. I didn't when you said it, top 10, and then when you're doing it, it's like, oh crap, a top 10. I think though, as we do the defensive players potentially tomorrow, like that one I could see being easier. Or maybe I'm jumping the gun here because I'm not thinking about it all in depth right now. But just thinking of the players over there, I think it'll be easier than what we had to do today.
It should be easier to come up with 10 names. It might actually be harder to order them properly. And that's probably a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a better problem to have.
Yeah. It's not good when you can't even come up with the 10 guys.
True.
Do you have to do it tomorrow? Can it wait till Friday? Can I join tomorrow? This is fun.
You can join tomorrow if you want, but you still have to do Friday because I'm going out of town.
We'll discuss offline. It should be fine. This is a fun exercise, though. I don't want to miss out on the.
I'll say this: I would prefer if you actually did this because then I have to do a whole other template if I don't.
See, I'm helping the producer out. There we go.
I like this.
True.
All right. Well, we're doing it again tomorrow because tomorrow's my last show until we get to training camp. So we will do the defensive players tomorrow. We'll have our last player grade 2. Probably won't be a shock if you've been paying attention, but should lead to some good discussion as well.
Who could it be?
Lance Briggs.
Yeah.
All right. Follow us on Twitter. Appreciate everyone. Make sure you check out our social media accounts and CHGO at CHGO_sports_Bears. Make sure you get those memberships at allchgo.com. Go ahead and hit a notification. I don't know. You can't notify yourself about individual shows until we post a link, but do that tomorrow at some point. We'll be back tomorrow, 1:00. We'll do the defensive version of this same show, hopefully. And as we like to say, if you enjoy the pod, tell someone about it. Go tell your Bears family, your friends, whatever. Say, hey, there's this show you got to check out, CHGO Bears Podcast. And I'd recommend, based on what I'm looking at in the Sox score right now, you watch our White Sox shows coming up later today as well. Just because they're fun. I've just decided my new strategy is to not watch the games. I only watch Sean and Herb and Vinny afterwards.
There you go.
Well, it's definitely more entertaining than the games because it sucks and it's unwatchable. So,
all right, guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow, 1:00. Be here.